Adams reads Hollywood Halloween edition. Yeah.
On a dark and stormy night.
Dark and stormy night.
There was thunderclaps and everything just a moment ago.
So for those of you who are audio, we are actually in costume.
Well, you are. I am a little bit.
You're a little bit.
Well, I'm Frederick Frankenstein.
Yes. Yeah. And I am the creature, the monster, all the different...
Ooh, so
Yeah.
I was reading some bonus material in the book I have this time, and the guy at the end who's like, how to read Frankenstein, said that depending on your perspective, you're either going to call him the creature or the monster.
Yep.
If you sympathize with his actions, he's the creature. If you don't, he's the monster.
That's right.
I like that you're the creature.
I'm the creature. I'm the creature for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we also had some engagement online, which is awesome.
Love
and we
that.
had a couple
Love to
comments.
see it.
We've been posting shorter sections of the content on YouTube and on Instagram and various other places. But we did have a comment, and it actually comes from the V for Vendetta episode.
Oh, wow. I like that someone watched that.
Yep. That's one of our least watched episodes.
Wild.
Yeah.
I love that book and that movie.
Yeah. But someone did comment, and you know, the context for our discussion is like a short clip, us talking about the relationship between happiness and capitalism, and essentially that the concept of chasing happiness endlessly is a communist tool of oppression, as well like The Secret and Manifestation and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That these are oppression release valves, essentially. So that was the comment here, was from a user by the name of Frederick Abramson.
I think it's pronounced Frederick, actually.
Frederick?
Sorry.
Frederick? Okay.
It's the Young Frankenstein reference.
Oh, yes. No,
Frederick Frankenstein.
Frederick Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So he says, yes, you guys are right, but I lived through 90s in Russia after the Soviet Union collapsed, and it wasn't a pleasure time, so capitalism is not bad, but broken financial education is bad, right?
I mean, I agree with him about broken financial education.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is like, I hear this, I have a number of people that I know from Ukraine and Russia and Poland and the former Soviet bloc, and, you know...
Well, yeah, my late brother-in-law was, like, he up there as well, yeah.
Right.
He was, oh man, he would go off on capitalism all the time, because he was a smart guy. He understood that communism in Russia is not... I mean, that's a totalitarian state in the same way that, like, capitalism functions as an oligarchical state.
Right.
Here.
Well, and if you think about it, too, so, you know, yes, communism was... That particular blend was very bad. I wouldn't say that either of us on this program are advocating for communism, because...
Especially not Soviet bloc style.
Especially not Soviet bloc. But, like, it's concentrating the power into a centralized system that builds exploitation.
Yeah.
But capitalism does that too.
Yeah.
And that's a really important point, is that, you know, if you look at what happens when Russia goes capitalist, you get oligarchy.
You get the oligarchy back, absolutely.
And Putin comes into power.
Yeah.
So what you end up with is another totalitarian state. And where are we headed because of oligarchy? We're headed towards authoritarianism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
strongly. Same way.
Yeah. And you see this all throughout, you know, American history as well. A lot of the kind of rise of fascism, especially in the Reconstruction period, we talk about that, has everything to do with capitalism. It has to do with the free market, which is not really ever free.
It's about, reinforcing, like, inexpensive labor to maximize profits.
Always. There's always the maximization of profits. So we just wanted to talk about that real briefly, you know, because we love comments, we love engagement.
Oh, Frederick, thank you for writing in.
Thanks for writing in, you know. Agree with us or disagree with us, we'd love to engage, you know, so, but essentially, you know, I think what we are for is, like, pro-democracy everything.
Absolutely.
Like, and I personally don't think you can have true democracy unless you have democracy in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it should be starting. If we're going to have systems of labor that we all have to engage in to survive, then they have to be democratic. Otherwise, they are oppressive. That's just the way it goes.
Right. And if you have a CEO, which is essentially an authoritarian,
he's
a
petty tyrant.
He's a petty tyrant, right?
Yeah.
And a board is just a council of nobles. That's all it is, right? So you're just replicating actually feudal structures, and reasserting systems of power that ultimately seek to crumble democratic systems. So it actually erodes democracy by having strong capitalism.
Yeah.
That's essentially my primary argument.
Absolutely. I'm in this, I'm in a little community theater group, and we always try to figure out how to like organize so like we can like make decisions. And one of the things we're always bumping up against is like how to have like a decision-making body that like represents everybody's interests and stuff like that. And it's like just coming up with a name was so challenging for us.
And it's hard work.
It is.
And it requires lots of community engagement.
Yeah.
So we wanted to address that. I forgot to ask you about this. I want to do a quick promo for my stuff.
Oh, do it. Yeah.
So I have been writing for straight 1,000 words a day for 995 days. It happens that Halloween is day 1,000.
What?
That was not on purpose at all.
That's so cool.
I started in February, so it was not calculating time. I was just trying to write.
Yeah.
So I'm going to post about this more on my own social media feed. You can find me all over the place. Obviously, I'll post a short here on YouTube, since this is primarily my channel as well as the Home of Resistance Reads. But I'm doing a book giveaway to celebrate that, and I'll have more details on my social media.
Super fucking cool, man. What a run.
And since it's Halloween, there'll be all scary stuff.
You gotta do that.
So, yeah, for sure. So, with all that out of the way, let's dive into Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, man, I feel like, and I might just be partial because this is kind of my favorite book, but I also feel like this is like the richest text that we've talked about in this podcast.
Well, there's a reason that it's like,
a Stone Cold classic.
A Stone Cold classic. It changed the way we think about literature in several dimensions.
That's great. I love that.
You know, it also kind of helps that, like, her dad was the father of Anarchy, and her mother was one of the founders of feminism.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
So
they were also badass journalists who like went and did war reporting and stuff like that. Oh my god, that's how they met, I think.
Right.
So cool.
So there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in Frankenstein, especially, you know, and we'll get into this later, but like if we think about like what's happening with, I mean, depending on how you classify our fourth industrial revolution now. With AI.
Ooh, yeah.
I was looking at how people are classifying, and people either classify as the third, fourth, or fifth.
Okay.
Kind of settled more with fourth, the way that they were presenting the information.
I feel like that's like eras of feminism too. Like it kind of depends on who you are, like how you want to like parse that and stuff like that. Also, like better left to historians in like 150 years.
Who actually have they have a reason to classify. Yeah, bird's eye view.
Yeah.
That they're not mired in the times. But either way.
It does feel like an industrial, like at least a labor revolution, if nothing else.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Or evolution of labor. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Mary Shelley's life, man. Should we start there?
Yeah, let's start
just briefly, like a really brief summary of how shit went down for her.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, okay, so she was born to William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft, and Mary Wollstonecraft wrote like a seminal text on feminism. It's not coming to mind right now.
Yeah, there on the audiobook, because I had a paperback and an audiobook, and I kind of, because they both had different introductions.
Something on the rights of women.
I wrote it.
Anyway, she was a seminal writer. Hold on, I can find it in the back of my book. But she died when Mary, her daughter. She died 11 days after her daughter was born.
Yeah.
A Vindication of the Rights of Women is the work by Mary Wollstonecraft.
Yeah.
And so Mary Shelley, Godwin, grew up kind of idolizing her mother and loving her father deeply, although they didn't always get along great. He remarried, so she had like steps and half sisters and
total wicked stepmom situation.
Yeah. So she became very rebellious as a youth and idolized her mother even more, especially into her teenage years, when she met Percy Bysshe Shelley. And he was already kind of a notable poet, but they had a very sexy romance, and you can read all about that. Some people, there's an urban legend that she lost her virginity on her mother's grave because they like to visit graveyards together.
Yeah.
Which is something my wife and I also like to do. Graveyards are very pretty, and they're usually kind of empty, so you can kind of experience nature and history at the same time. But also, it can be kind of spooky, which is a little erotic sometimes.
I mean, it certainly lends to the whole Frankenstein corpse.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's actually why I kind of don't believe it, is because it's got all of this, like...
Sure.
It's got all the kind of, like, flavor of the book itself built into it.
That's a very good point. A lot of people do say that little factoid comes from, like, pre-publication, but it's so hard. Like, that whole well is so muddied. Anyway, so Percy Shelley was friends with Lord Byron, and when he was still married to his first wife, who had, like, left him for another man, while he was kind of, like, hanging around the Godwins, they basically eloped before he got a divorce to the continent, because there was a whole bunch of scandal about their relationship. And Byron was also having scandal about his relationship, because he was like the biggest slut in England at the time.
Yeah.
And he kind of had to peace out for his own safety. So Mary Shelley and her stepsister, Charlotte, and Byron and Percy Shelley and Byron's doctor, John Polidori, all basically go to the continent, go to Switzerland to have a little, like, summer holiday. But it's the summer, or the year without a summer.
The year without a summer, 1816.
Because a big old fucking volcano exploded. And,
in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Rasputina, the band Rasputina, wrote that song, The Year Without a Summer.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And so while they're kind of stuck inside because it's all fucking rainy and shit, they decide to have a competition about who can write the scariest ghost story. And so they do that for a couple days, but then the sun comes out, and all of a sudden Shelley and Byron and Polidori are like, well, we want to go out on the lake now because it's Geneva and it's fucking dope. And Mary Shelley's like, yeah, but I got this great idea, so I'm going to keep writing. At the end of the whole competition, Byron's written something called A Fragment, which is kind of a vampire story. Polidori ends up expanding that into The Vampire, which some people say inspired Bram Stoker to write Dracula.
It's also where we get our really modern conception of, like, the Lord vampire who's, like, you know, very sexual.
Yeah.
And, you know,
of course,
charismatic.
Of course, yeah. And I think Alexander Dumas in The Count of Monte Cristo theorizes that that just comes from Polidori being in love with Lord Byron, which I think is really funny. He's just like, he's so sexy and magnetic. And then Mary Shelley, like, comes back to England after their 6 weeks in Geneva and finishes writing Frankenstein over the course of about a year and a half. And she publishes it without her name on it because she's a lady at that time. You know, that time it was very taboo for women to be novelists. You know, you would get one from time to time, like Anne Radcliffe or something like that. But yeah, or Austen. Done. Yeah, exactly right. But it becomes a hit, but people are also scandalized by it. They think that the author of Frankenstein must be some sort of depraved, crazy person. In a couple of years, she does another edition of it with, like, some minor corrections in, like, 1821 or 2, and puts her name on it. And people are even more scandalized because they know who she is. She's like, she's a Nepo baby, basically. And they can't believe that someone so, you know, polite and well-mannered wrote this Gothic masterpiece. And
they actually, a lot of them think that her husband secretly did it, and he's not giving her credit.
Yeah.
So, because she's married to Percy Shelley,
who is a famous writer as well.
Right.
Yeah, but he's a poet.
Yeah. So they think that, and, like, you know, I was listening to one lecture, and there's, like, you can actually see the bits that from Percy's poetry, if you do, like, a literature comparison, you can actually tell where some of his influence was.
It's minor phrases, and
super minor.
Yeah, they're all annotated in both, actually, the copies that I have.
Oh, nice.
Well, I actually have like 5 copies, but both of the Penguin editions annotate them, and it's like little turns of phrase, like little minor.
Or like certain scenery.
It's basically edited. You know, he did an edit on it.
Right.
But
essentially people, like, discount her for a while.
Yeah. Which is wild because she wrote like 4 other major novels. One of them is called The Last Man, and it's the first dystopian novel. And he was dead by that point, and they still fucking slap. Yeah. You know, I think her prose is some of my favorite prose that exists. That's why it's one of my favorite books. I mean, the story itself is amazing, but I think her writing is just so rich and engaging. Anyway, that's Mary Shelley's life. Do you want to do the plot of?
Well, let's finish because we did the 1818 edition. So
we read the 1818 edition.
Yes. And most people read the 1831 edition.
That was the one that was widely available for like very
for a long time.
The standard edition is what
it's called. And so we'll talk about some revisions when we do our discussion after the plot, and some of the major changes. But just like one quick thing, like after Mary Shelley publishes Frankenstein, her life goes to shit.
That is true.
2 of her children die, and her husband. They all die before she revives
this fucking boating accident, basically like right out of this book.
Right.
It's wild.
It's like a drunken boating accident. It's super stupid. And so it really influences the 1831. We'll get into how after we talk about the plot. But yeah, I can certainly break down the plot.
Yeah.
And the plot of Frankenstein's like relatively straightforward, right?
I think so.
Relatively.
Yeah.
I mean, like compared to some of the things that we've talked about with like.
Well, we always say that, and then it still takes us like 40 minutes to get through.
But so the story kind of starts out. You're really nothing to do with anything but like this sailor on the ice.
Oh, I just want to, before we get into it, I just want to say that I love the framing devices in the book. I love that there's like a Matryoshka doll situation happening where there's like an Arctic explorer talking to his sister meets Frankenstein, and within that he gets the story of Frankenstein creating his reanimated man, and then within that you get the creature's perspective. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, so it starts out this guy he's kind of exploring the ice. Walton. And Walton is trying to find like Northwest Passage sort of situation, right? Yeah. As people have been doing for centuries.
He wants to discover the source of magnetism in the poles.
Yes, magnetism in the poles. And so he's up in the Arctic ice, and he's talking about how lonely he is, and that's kind of a recurring theme through Frankenstein for everyone. Yeah. Loneliness and isolation. And he's got his sailors here, one day they see some random person on a sledge, like going across the ice, and just, what the hell is that?
Like a giant.
Like a giant. Like, is that a giant? What is that? And then, like, he goes down and he's writing an entry, and his men call him up, and then they, there's someone sitting right outside his boat on the ice and another sledge, but it's like
one dog.
There's
like one dog, and the guy looks like he's about to die.
He's about to die. And this guy is like got the balls to be like, "Where are you headed, fellas? Like, where are you headed? Are you headed north?" And he's like, "Because if you're not headed north, I'm not coming with." And Walton's like,
"Sir, you're going to die,
dying, dude." And so they welcome him on board, and they become fast friends.
Walton's straight up in love with Victor.
He's like, I've never been so fulfilled in friendship and companionship ever.
What a magnificent specimen of a man.
He's kind of a little horny over him.
Yeah.
It definitely has that impression.
I mean,
and they get to know each other, and he's like, "So what the hell are you doing out on the ice?" And he's like, "Well, let me tell you."
Yeah, let me tell you my story.
So then it kind of flashes.
I was born in Geneva.
And it kind of flashes back, and you start out at his childhood, and he introduces people, including his father, who's like, a well-to-do man.
A judge who's retired, he's well-respected, and has a very cool, hot, younger wife.
Yep. And she dies pretty quick.
Not pretty quick, when he's 17.
When he's 17. Oh, yeah, that's right. He's 17. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, like, young deaths in this book. I get them mixed up.
Oh, yeah.
And he also, has a cousin, hot cousin.
A cousin too,
cousin,
yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah. They do actually change her to an orphan in the 1831 edition.
Well, she was orphaned in this one too, right?
Yeah, but she's not familiar related in 1831.
Oh,
and this
she's
one,
an adopted orphan.
She's an adopted orphan. In
That's
1831
right. You are right.
Yeah.
So I've been reading a lot of Agatha Christie recently, just to help with my anxiety as the world falls apart, And
that's one.
In the short stories, there are so many romances between first cousins. It's
Oh,
so
well, and
fucking crazy.
And it's interesting because a lot of people will say in the 1831 edition, well, she changed it because she was worried about accusations of incest, but like it was totally normal in the 19th century.
In the 1920s and 30s, Agatha Christie's like, it shows up like 8 times in her works.
It's still legal in Colorado right now.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's not illegal. It's just obviously frowned upon.
It's a taboo that we know hemophilia comes from.
Right. And there's obvious reasons not to marry your cousin, genetically speaking. But
unless you're in Shelbyville.
Because
they're so attractive.
That's right. So anyway, so he's, he grows up and he has like, kind of the standard kind of education of a, highborn.
No, I think that in the so he mentions that he's homeschooled.
That's right. He's
homeschooled.
Like Mary Shelley, he's homeschooled.
Yeah, his mom takes care of their education. His dad also participates in it, which I think is really interesting. And he and Elizabeth and also his best friend Henry Clerval, all like
that's right, and Henry
study study with them, and they're all like the best of pals, and it's like a really idyllic childhood. Although you kind of get the impression that Mary Shelley thinks that this is actually not a good approach because he's not his dad doesn't crack down on him when he starts reading
Agrippa, Paracelsus, all the occult texts. Magnus. These are, and if you don't know who they are,
I've got précis for you.
Okay.
I was really interested. So, Cornelius Agrippa was a 16th century polymath who wrote a work utilizing the Kabbalah to prove the innate superiority of women and to attain his PhD in theology at the time. But he was then denounced by a Franciscan prior and forced to flee Dole, where he lived. Then he bounced around Europe and wrote the 3 books of occult philosophy. Paracelsus was also a 16th century scientist, but he focused on medicine through observation, which was revolutionary at the time, and also received wisdom, which is interesting. I like that he blended those two. He also pioneered some modern methods, but also ascribed to ancient ideas, i.e. astrology, the 4 elements, the doctrine of signatures, stuff like that. He promoted antiseptic treatments, though, which was revolutionary as well, and introduced invented liniment and laudanum, which is fascinating. He's also an early exponent of the dose makes the poison, which I think we still adhere to today, like arsenic and stuff like that. Albert Magnus, he's a really interesting dude. He was a 13th century theologian and philosopher. He compiled and interpreted every extant writing by Aristotle and the commentary on those texts by Arabian scholars, which I think is fascinating because he was part of the church. He was also a surprisingly accurate student of the natural sciences, especially for his era. He studied botany, zoology, and pioneered the systematic system of minerals. One of his titles was Doctor Universalis. I'm not good at Latin because he was such a polymath. He was so revered as a discoverer of hidden truths about nature and the world, and he wrote many tomes on the subject of alchemy, which were attributed to him. He was so revered for his discovery of hidden truth that later tomes on the subject of alchemy were attributed to him after his death, which is why I think he's included with the other two, with Paracelsus and Agrippa, because they were both really into occult shit.
Yeah.
Magnus actually wasn't, but he was kind of slandered after his death because he was so widely revered.
Yeah.
And Thomas Aquinas was a student of his.
There's a lot of actually books between I've read all 3 of those guys.
Oh, cool!
I got really into occult and alchemy in my early 20s.
That sounds like something someone in their early 20s would do. Absolutely.
Yes, yes, and
like Victor.
Like Victor. I was like Victor in that way.
Oh, you were like Victor in so many ways.
Yes, so
you're a terrible father. I'm joking. He's an amazing father.
I try.
These kids are great.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff between the 12th and 16th century that people who were sometimes even against the occult, they'll write against it, that later on, a rumor, create people attribute all kinds of occult texts to them later. There's a whole series. There's a channel here on YouTube I occasionally watch because I'm actually doing research for a book to incorporate occults because I'm a little out of practice of reading the occult, but it's called Esoterica, and he covers all he's actually a PhD guy who is like his whole area is like the studying the history of the occult that is fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like he's really into this kind of stuff. He's like falls in like Victor falls in love with these kinds of concepts. And and a lot of people who do, it's because like it's like this magical idea of power, of immortality, of turning lead into gold, of all this occult worship and power. And his own father is like, "What are you reading that garbage for?"
He just casually dismisses it. He doesn't explain why it's out of date in like the modern conception of science. And I feel like she hammers that home in like 2 or 3 different passages.
She does.
That is what he wouldn't have gone down that road if that hadn't been the case. If his dad had explained to him why they were not worth studying, as it were.
Yeah. And so then, he kind of is, becomes a teenager. They have, a pretty, a standard life for upper class in that particular era. And then he goes off to college.
Sure.
He goes off to university, and I mean, one of the first things that happen is one of his professors is like, "What the hell are you reading that stuff for? Like, pick up some real books, dude."
Yeah.
Which is like something I've said to a few conspiracy theorist students in my time.
Absolutely. When you do your own research, actually try researching that research.
Actually understand where the sources are getting their information.
And Victor doesn't get along with that guy as well as Waldman. And Waldman is like the other main professor in the natural sciences at the school that he goes to in Ingolstadt. And he is like way cooler about it. He's like, those guys were super innovative for their time, but we've moved so far past that.
Yeah.
Here are some books that you really should be reading. I think my wife might be coming in a moment. I heard the garage door. So, don't be startled, everybody. I know it's a scary podcast right now.
That's
so Victor like loves that dude and dives right into those books that he recommends.
Yeah.
And does like intense studying for like a couple years and then discovers the source of reanimating tissue.
And in the meantime, he's like a prodigy level student.
Oh, he
reinvents like certain processes.
He patents a couple
technology.
Yeah.
So he's like a genius.
And he's like he's the fucking talk of the school.
Yeah,
like
everyone is like, this Victor Frankenstein guy, like he is.
Yeah.
Like, who is this guy? But then he starts getting like into this project, and gets really interesting. And I think in part too, because we mentioned briefly like his mother dies when he's 17, and I do think that there's an element of like him thinking about his mother as he's like diving into this. Like,
I think that's exactly
maybe if I can do this, like if I can bring someone back, what about my mom? Kind of thing. I think there's this kind of sense of like that connection. And of course, Mary Shelley lost her mother and didn't have her mother, so there's kind of a
also a diary entry from 1816 about like her having a dream that her baby that had passed away was like back.
Yeah. There's that. That's another very famous thing, which she talks about in her preface to the 1831 edition.
Right. Yeah.
So he spends all this time in solitude. He even talks about how it's like, he's like, I know I'm obsessed. I know I'm crazy about this, but I must press forward. I'm so close. I will get exercise and sunshine afterwards. I will eat again afterwards.
Yeah, his health is failing.
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't stop working he's
obsessed.
16, 18 months.
It's like maniacal.
Yeah.
Right?
It's very monomaniacal.
Yeah. So he just, so he finally does it, and he brings them back. And, a lot of things with Frankenstein, we tend to think of, it's electricity, but he never actually refuses to kind of tell you.
He refuses to tell you what it is, so you get the impression based on like very subtle allusions that it's a chemical process that interacts with electricity. There's a moment in his childhood where he sees like a bolt of lightning strike a giant tree, and like outside the place where they're staying on vacation at one point. And he had like been talking to the guy that was hosting them about, Agrippa and stuff like that. And he's like, that guy was the first person to be like, here's some real scientific works. And so Victor shifts, but he's like, why did that tree light on fire and like turn to cinders?
Right.
And his dad was like, it was electricity. And he's like, why don't these guys that I love so much know about electricity?
And it's also good to note that, like, I mean, he wants to make, like, the perfect specimen. So he, like, enhances his ligaments and joints. He makes the creature 8 feet tall and understand, like, I think
because he thinks it'll be easier to work on him that way too.
Well, that too, but he also he wants like this almost like angelic, like he's kind of trying to literally play God. He's trying to like recreate Adam, as it were. But he also uses animal parts. So there's a mixture of human corpse pieces and animal pieces in this.
There are several references that the creature, I should say, makes when he's talking to, or when he's like self-narrating later about how his ligaments are more supple and stronger than human ligaments.
He's like he's basically like Captain America, but like built from corpses, right? He's a super soldier almost.
Yeah, there's actually a DC Comics character that's like it's Frankenstein's monster, but he's basically the DC Universe version of a super soldier. It's really funny.
Yeah. So he makes this thing, and then he like does it, and then he's like immediately horrified when it opens its eyes.
In the moment where its chest beats and its eyes open, he freaks out.
Yep. So and then he goes back and he's like he has these terrible nightmares, and then he wakes to his creature like doing what like a little kid would do, like opening the curtains and be like, "Yo, Papa, what am I doing here? What's the whole thing? What's this all about?" Yeah, right. And then
he just hears it moving around and he freaks out.
And he freaks out and he grabs his stuff and he flees. And then he just like leaves.
He just
leaves. And this poor creature has no idea what to do. It doesn't even know where it came from, what's happening,
it's
nothing.
And we find out later, it's like just in a fugue state. It doesn't really remember a lot of like what was going on.
Right.
In this period. It just like puts on Victor's clothes to like the best of its ability given its stature.
Yeah.
And like
its cloak, the cloak is really the only thing that even remotely fits.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, to continue Victor's story, Victor's in a fugue state. He like wanders around. He becomes like, he's struck with a fever immediately after meeting his best friend Henry, who comes to town because he's been writing so infrequently that Henry convinces his father to let him go to school at Ingolstadt, basically, so he can pursue his passion for literature, but also
to watch over his son.
Yeah, look over Victor.
Like, for some reason he hardly ever writes. No one hears from him. Even the people at the school are like, "What the hell's happened?" Yeah. So he shows up, and Victor is like, he's like sick as hell.
Yeah.
First of all, from like what he's done, but also because he's like, been so obsessed for so long.
Neglected his
health completely.
Yeah.
So his friend's like nursing him back to health.
For months. And Victor's just like, okay, well, I guess that's over.
Yep.
I'm glad I created that man and now he's gone.
He's gone and I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah. So they just like pursue their studies for a couple of years.
Yep. And so like, 2 years kind of passes and then
Elizabeth writes to Victor and she's like, "Hey, I think you should come home soon." And then like kind of immediately after that, his dad writes to him and he's like, I hate to tell you this, but your brother William was murdered. And we think that the murderer was like the nurse maid, the housekeeper nanny.
Yeah, I guess is she like an au pair?
So, yeah, from what I can tell, she's basically like a servant who was like kind of adopted by the house because she and Elizabeth are the same age and, buds. Yeah. Essentially.
So
Justine Moretz, poor Justine. So Victor's like on the way, but he just like hurries back and in the back of his mind, he's like, it couldn't have been the guy I made, right?
He's like, it couldn't have possibly been the monster.
That's crazy.
It was like 2 years ago.
It's easy to think of that. He's probably dead.
There's no way he's still.
But like he speeds off back to Geneva from Germany, but like on the way he kind of like slows his pace because his trepidation is like rising, and he stops by the lake in Geneva and like stays there for a couple days, girds his strength, and then continues on. And they're like, Yeah, William was strangled. He's like this beautiful angelic 6-year-old kid with blonde hair and blue eyes. Perfect baby. Justine, we think she's the murderer because, as Elizabeth tells Victor, she had put a little like necklace with a picture of their mother, of Victor's mother, on William as like a little treat. He like wanted to wear it and like go out and play. Justine had that in her pocket when they found her. She was coming back from a day off. She had like visited friends in like one town over, and on her way back, someone tells her that William is missing, and she's like, "Oh my God, I gotta go look for him." And she's like super upset. And then when they find him strangled, she like breaks down and is like distraught over it. But people take this as a sign that like of guilt, that she's like overacting it.
Yeah.
You know?
And then they find the thing in her pocket.
And it's basically like, you know, she's compelled to confess by the police. Mm-hmm. They badger her into it. Mm-hmm. And Elizabeth and Victor like visit her in jail, and she's like, Elizabeth is distraught because like her best friend murdered her little like nephew. What the fuck? And Justine's like, no, I didn't do it. They just like wouldn't let me alone, and I was so upset. I just wanted them to stop like tormenting me, so I confessed to it. But I did not do it. Yeah, the cops have been doing that for hundreds of years.
Yeah, guys, badgering people into false confession.
And so you know, Elizabeth is relieved. Victor is even more tormented by this.
Well, and the whole time Victor is like, it had to be it. It had to be my creature.
Yeah.
It had to be. Like, he's just starting to see signs that like maybe this was actually what happened, and he suspects this, and he never says anything.
He never once tells anybody that they're in danger.
They might think I'm mad.
Yeah.
And so he just completely avoids responsibility, and Justine is found guilty and put to death.
Yep, absolutely.
And so she dies.
Victor gets sick again.
So they try to nurse him back to health again. And then they go gallivanting through the Alps.
They go. His dad takes him to the Alps to like get him outside and maybe cheer him up. But that is where he encounters when he goes off on his own one time. He encounters the creature. The creature makes an amazing speech on page. I noted it down because the first thing he says to him is so effing cool. Hold on page 90. Yeah. Okay. So the creature's first speech in the book. So Victor tells him to be gone, vile insect, or rather stay that I might trample you to dust. And oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims who you have so diabolically murdered. That's the first thing that Victor says to his creature ever. And it says the demon here. But the creature says, I expected this reception. All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us. You propose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind. If you comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will glut the maw of death until it be satiated with the blood of your remaining friends.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So take some personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Or else. Right?
Absolutely.
And Victor Frankenstein is absolutely struck by his eloquence. He's like, where the hell did he learn to speak like that?
Absolutely.
Because last he saw, he was like, you know, just born.
Yeah, he was doing the normal thing we think of Frankenstein doing from the movies, which is going,
because, you know, he didn't have language yet, or didn't know anything yet, and he hears this he's essentially a newborn, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, so then
the monster compels Victor to listen to us.
The monster's like, you're going to listen to my story. And so Victor says, all right, I'll listen.
Yeah.
And so now we get the monster story.
Yeah, the story within the story. The creature tells him that he woke up and like didn't understand. It took him 2 months to separate his senses from one another so he could understand what was going on in the world around him.
And he's just like wandering around and hiding everything.
Yeah, but he's like, so he's just like, basically immediately after he wakes up, he wanders out of the town, and like off into the woods essentially. And he is just kind of like living off of berries and nuts. And throughout the at least the 1818, he constantly refers to the fact that he needs less nutrition than other things. He can survive off of like grazing nuts and berries and does so for years on end. And he's like living in the woods and subject to the elements, but they don't really affect him the same way that we do. We can tell from context. And yeah, the only thing that really fits him is this cloak, and everything else is kind of just like rags that he's like wrapped around himself. And eventually he finds his way towards some shelter, which is like a little hovel attached to a cottage. And I think this is a cottage in the sense that like Europeans think of them, like in Sense and Sensibility, the three daughters and the mother move into a cottage, but it's like a 4-bedroom house with a kitchen and shit like that. I think that's what's going on here. But he's like in this little like, basically where you might keep wood or something.
Pigsty.
Or pigsty or something like. Is it a pigsty?
So first he goes into a house and a guy runs out screaming and the villagers attack him, and then he flees back into the woods.
I'm sorry, that is right. Absolutely.
And then he comes back again and retakes the spot where that guy was at first, stays there a few nights, wanders around, tries to figure stuff out.
Takes all this stuff.
Takes all his stuff, gets himself fed, warm, all that stuff. And then he discovers this family.
Yes.
And he's really quickly fascinated with them.
The cottagers, as they're called most often. Yeah.
And then he lives in their pigsty and hides in there essentially.
Yeah, he like boarded up in the daytime so nobody like thinks to look in there. But he can see through like a tiny little hole in like what I imagine to be like a knot, in like a board that he can like just see through. And
I think the 1831, it's a keyhole he looks.
That makes sense.
But in this one, it's just like it's like a hole in a board.
Yeah, and so there's DeLacy, who's the father. He's the old blind man from all the movies. There's his son Felix, who is desolate for the first 2 months that he's living there. There's Amber, is that right? Angela,
Amber begins with an A.
Begins with an A. And she's very pretty, and he kind of loves her a little bit. Yeah. And then eventually there's also
Safi,
who is she's Turkish but like Christian. She's like basically a refugee, and you get a whole cool adventure story about how she gets there and how Felix meets her. But this family is basically they're a Parisian nobility that have had to leave France for political reasons, and they're living kind of a hand to mouth because they don't know. You can tell at like later on it occurs to you that they were learning how to live without servants when the creature discovers them, because they're kind of bad at farming and stuff like that. And they're really poor, but slowly over the course of like a year that he's living in their pigsty, they become more competent and then also acquire servants again.
Well, because Safi brings a series of jewels.
Yes.
So Safi brings jewels so then they can kind of have their lifestyle people again. But Safi's also important because like for the first chunk of time, he can't understand what's happening, what they're saying. But then
he's fascinated, but kind of doesn't get it.
Get it. So when Safi shows up, they start teaching her French.
Right.
And so he learns French and then learns all the letters, learns how to read and write.
Right.
He at one point finds a sack of books in the woods. Paradise Lost.
They teach Safi, this is the best part, they teach Safi French by reading her Volney's Ruins of Empires. So he also gets a political education,
political history,
while he's learning to like understand language.
Well, it turns out these were actually the books that Mary Shelley was reading at the time.
That's awesome.
So,
Paradise Lost makes sense.
Right, Paradise Lost, and he actually he thinks that Paradise... The creature at first thinks Paradise Lost is like a non-fiction story.
Yes, he does. Also a volume of Plutarch's Lives and The Sorrows of Werther.
Yep. So these are the books that Mary Shelley was reading. So she's like, I was reading when I was writing this book.
Yeah, I love that.
So he gets this kind of education. He's learning the classics, but like the whole time he's so lonely, and he wants nothing more than to join this family around the fire and be a part of them. And there's a lot of commentators who talk about how, like, well, this was like Mary Shelley, who was like, you know, the stepdaughter who was like pushed out of the family, so she was always looking out from within. So here's like this other connection.
It's also one of the earliest examples of someone having a parasocial relationship with people that I've ever come across, because it's literally like he's listening to a podcast and he loves them so much and he like connects with them emotionally. Yes. But when he tries to talk to them, they're like, who are you, man? Yeah. Like, you know all about us, but we've never seen you or heard of you before.
Well,
like,
it's worse than that, but...
no, but I mean, that's what it's like for...
But that's what it's like, right?
For people on the internet who do something.
Right. So, like, when you're watching us and you adore us so much.
Absolutely. You think we're your best friends.
That's right.
No, but
yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like a truly parasocial relationship.
Yeah.
And, I don't think that they're... I mean, I'm not as... I think you're more well-versed in the classics than I am. But, like, I don't think that... This might be one of the first parasocial relationships in like, significant ones in fiction.
I know, right? She was a fucking innovator, man.
Yeah. So anyway, eventually he's like, all right.
He girds himself.
He's like, okay, I'm ugly because I'm obviously made of different body parts.
Well, and he's looking at Felix, who is like a cute boy.
Right, he's a cute boy, and then he sees himself in the reflection, and he's like, oh, no wonder people are in the water.
Yeah.
He's like, so no wonder people are freaking out because he sees himself, and he's made from body parts.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, but the father is blind. So the strategy here is to introduce, he's like, because they're always taking in travelers and the poor and feeding them and putting them up. So I know they have kind and compassionate hearts. All I have to do is get the father on my side, and then maybe I can, maybe I'll have an in. Maybe they'll understand, they'll see how gentle I am. You know, he wants nothing more than to be a good person who is loved by a family.
Yeah.
That is all the creature wants.
Yes.
Right? And so he then makes his move. The kids are out of the house, and Felix is out of the house.
It's kind of going well.
It's kind of going well.
Yeah.
And then the
guy's like, you sound like a countryman of mine.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, are you a countryman? And you know, he's kind of banding about by saying things like, well, I'm a traveler. There's this family that I'm kind of like been dependent on, but they don't know me, but I'm hoping for that they can kind of sponsor me and help me out. You know, they live nearby. What are their names?
Yeah.
And then the kids come home early.
They were at a fair,
and they came back early, and it goes horribly. And
Felix goes off.
Felix goes off, starts punching him and wailing on him, and you know he runs out, and he's pissed, and he's like, I'm gonna tear him limb from limb. Runs out into the wilds, cools down. It's like, okay, I just scared them. I can fix this. It's not too late.
Yeah.
But he goes back, and they've already left.
Yeah.
And he does overhear a conversation between Felix and like a constable. I think it was
No, it's the landlord.
It's the landlord.
That they're renting the house from, and he's like, you guys are sacrificing 3 months rent plus your deposit if you leave. Why are just stay for a little while longer?
Yeah. Came into the house.
I can't. We gotta go. My dad's about to die from fright.
Yeah.
And the monster. Oh, sorry, the creature. Because I do sympathize with him.
Yeah.
The creature is so distraught that, like, because he's back in his little hovel and he's hearing them, and they leave like a moment later. And so as soon as it gets dark, he just gets everything that burns and rings it around the house and lights it up.
Yeah.
And
burns everything to the ground.
As soon as he's sure that it's not salvageable, he leaves.
Yeah. And it's like his first kind of real act of violence. It's like, obviously, after he's been totally rejected and left again abandoned for the second time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though this was a parasocial relationship for him, it was like obviously earth-shattering.
Yeah.
So then he wanders around a while, travels for a bit, and ends up back in Geneva.
Yeah.
And then
he sees this little child, and he's like, this child is so innocent and angelic. that he cannot possibly reject me, and I'll adopt him. I'll take him. He's gonna kidnap the child. I'll take him, and he can be my companion, and then I will have a relationship with a person. But the child reacts the way that Felix reacted, and he's like, "You're a monster. You're repulsive."
And he's like, "Do you know who I am?"
Yeah. Do you know who my dad is?
My
dad's Frankenstein, man. And he's like,
and so then that's when he kills him. I don't think he purposely does
no, he's trying to silence him.
He's trying to silence him, and he accidentally crushes his throat.
Yes.
And so he dies. And then he starts to panic, but then he sees the locket, and he's like, "Aha!" And so he sees a lovely maid passing by, and he slips the locket in her pocket, which is how Justine gets framed for the murder.
Absolutely, yeah. Then he, hey, what does he do next? So he just starts following Frankenstein.
Yeah,
like follows him
around
to the Alps.
He follows him to the Alps, and then that's where we are. And then he says, "Okay, now you know my
tale.
Make me a wife. Make me a wife."
I am so detested by everyone and everything that the only thing that could love me and give me companionship is someone like me.
Make another like me.
If you make another like me, of
just
the opposite
as
sex,
just
as Eve was created, we will go to South America. We will go to the wilds of South America and never have any contact with any other human being, which is obviously how Europeans viewed South America back then.
Yep.
Because it was not a barren wilderness with no humans.
One of the most populated continents on the planet.
But that's his proposal. And Victor, also being a European, is like, whoa, I mean, theoretically that's feasible. Maybe I could do it. Maybe I should.
He does actually feel sorry for him. He's like,
for a moment, he does.
He does. He's like, oh, maybe I probably should have done. I kind of do have a responsibility. Maybe I should do this. So he makes his promise, and he's okay. I'll make you a wife.
Yeah.
And goes off and convinces his father that he needs to get more education on these other topics. So he goes off to stay on this like barren-ish island.
So his plan is like, I need more education, and I want to see the world before I settle down with Elizabeth.
That's right.
So Henry and I are going to travel to France and then to England because he's read a paper about English scientists that have come up with new techniques that might actually make it easier for him to make a partner for a creature. So he needs to go to England, but he proposes it as like a jaunt, a 2-year trip before his marriage, and then he's going to settle down. But he's like distraught the whole time, and because he keeps thinking about it and how detestable the process of making the creature was. And now that he's not in his like mad state of scientific discovery, he can see it with fresh eyes. He's like, I really don't want to do this. He's also thinking the whole time, like, if I make a partner for this creature and they procreate, they're so monstrous that they will like be a rival species to humans.
Yeah.
And take us out.
And also like, and there's also this thought that like, well, like if I make this other person, how do we know that this person
is going to feel the same way as the creature?
Same way as the creature
is
going to agree to a compact we made before they were even made.
This is explored in the movie Bride of Frankenstein, by the way.
Yeah. So like basically he's like most of the way done actually.
Yes, he's in Scotland. He's
in like this little island off the coast of Scotland.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he's doing the work or whatever, and he gets most of the way there, and then he sees
the creature looking at him.
He sees the creature looking at him, and he decides to destroy it.
Yeah, he comes, well, as he would put it, he comes to his senses, and the creature's like looking through the window, he's like, thumbs up, like, good job, man. I can see you're doing the thing I told you to do. And then Victor just like tears it apart. Like it's grisly. And the creature storms off like distraught. And Victor like goes out on the beach and is like, oh, I made the right choice. I can't make another one of these. This is like, this is a threat to humanity.
And the creature shows up.
Yeah, the creature shows up and he's like, I'll see you on your wedding day. Fucker.
Yeah.
Direct quote.
Yep.
And so Victor's like, oh, that doesn't bode well, but I gotta dispose of these body parts. So he goes out on a little skiff, he put all the body parts in a straw basket and weighted it, and he like throws it over there, and then he's so relieved with like being done with this whole project and facing. He knows he's gonna have to face the consequences, so he just like kind of lays down and goes to sleep on a boat. And that's what I was talking about. That the Percy Shelley's death, really was presaged by this book. Wakes up and he's in a storm, and he like turns out he's in Ireland, and he gets off the boat, and Irish people are like, yo, you fucking sicko, what's up? And he's like, what? That's a weird way to address the guy that just landed in your dock. And they're like, yeah, we don't like scumbags in Ireland. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, we know you murdered this dude right over here, this beautiful, beautiful man. And he looks, they take him to the inn where the body's being kept, and it's his buddy Henry.
Yep. And
the monster stomped off, back down to Perth, strangled Henry, and like, basically put him in a current that you knew would like intersect with Victor, because he's a smart boy.
Yeah, he's very, very
he's
smart.
So smart. He's like like Edmund Dante's man.
Yeah.
And so Victor's in prison for like 3 months, gets sick again, has like another one of his like fainting fits, and is like raving mad. And the only person in Ireland, apparently, that can speak French, is the magistrate. And he's like, I called your dad, and he's on his way. Oh, wait, no, he's here now. And you got, like, do you have a defense? And his dad writes off to the people in, like, the little island that he was staying at. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, he was here. We saw him, like, when the murder occurred. And so he's released. He has to go back to Geneva and get married now, and he's trying to be happy. He's almost doing it. Elizabeth has, like, he looks rough, and Elizabeth also looks kind of wan, and, like, she hasn't been, but they get married, and on his wedding night, he's stalking the house. He's got
a pistol.
He's got pistols and a sword.
So
he's like ready.
Yeah, instead of spending the time with his wife, he's like guarding the house.
But not good enough.
Not good enough. He hears her scream, goes up, and
she's strangled too. Yeah,
she's dead.
Yeah,
so he strangles her, and then
Victor basically just like leaves. He's like, I'm just gonna hunt this motherfucker down. I gotta get my revenge on the guy who's getting revenge on me. And
that's essentially
the story. He follows. He tracks him for 2 years. Again, it's like everything happens in the span of 2 years. All the way up to the Arctic.
Yep.
And the monster leaves him clues from time to time.
So he doesn't lose hope.
Yeah.
He basically leaves him a trail.
A trail of like food and clues.
You know what it kind of reminded me of when I was reading this for this time again?
What's that?
It reminded me of the Dark Tower. The man in black was always leaving a trail for Roland.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's like he leaves him a trail, and then you circle back around into the boat, and he's like telling Walton the story. Walton? Yeah, Walton the story.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I saw you taking notes. Here, let me check your notes to make sure you get my story right.
Yeah. And he, and then, of course, Walton continues writing letters to his sister, talking about things that are going on.
His sister has the same initials as Mary Shelley.
Yep. And Victor dies.
Victor dies, but at the moment of his death, the doctor like basically cries out, and then Walton goes to see what's going on, and the creature is like looking at Victor, and he has another amazing speech where he's like, my crimes have like come to fruition, and I'm no better for it, and like I regret that this happened.
And all I wanted was to be loved.
All I wanted to be was to be loved, and Walton's like, well, you shouldn't have been a murdering psycho then, should you? And he's like, my dad should have been a good dad, and then he's like, I'm gonna kill myself, I'm gonna burn myself on a pyre.
Yeah.
Now that this is complete, and then he just like goes off into the Arctic, and like, so the whole thing with Walton is really interesting because it's, as a framing device, Walton really strongly parallels Victor's crusade, because he's doing a crazy dangerous thing also.
Yeah.
And like in some of the letters he's writing to his sister, he's like, my crew like came to me and they're like, we want to leave. We don't think this is a good idea. And Victor like pops up. He's like, you guys are being cowards. Are you going to be cowards now that you're like at the moment of your victory? You should stay the course. Do the dangerous thing, because if you turn around now, no one's going to sing your songs. Yeah. And then he passes out again. You know. Yeah. And I'm like, Victor, did you not learn anything from your experience?
Well, the 1831's different. He actually does say back.
Yeah. Right.
And he tells Walton, like, if you go this course will destroy you.
It's so weird because he does have that speech, and then like in a later letter to Walton's sister, he's like, so your crew has decided to turn around again? And he's like, yeah, we're going to go back. He's like, okay, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's it. And we don't know exactly what happens to the creature, but you know, I guess
I have a lot of ideas about what happens to the creature. But those are just, you know, fanfics basically.
You got some Frankenstein fanfic out.
I don't have some Frankenstein fanfic out there, but I do have a really good idea for a comic book series that has never come to fruition about. I don't think that the creature can die. I think he probably just keeps on living on.
He does get shot multiple times.
He gets shot a lot.
He's like it's painful, but he doesn't.
Yeah, he has to convalesce for a little while. But it's like Victor, if he has a shock, has to convalesce for 2 months, and the creature, if he gets shot, has to convalesce for like a week and a half.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah, and he's back to. And doesn't treat the wound or anything like that. He just has to rest for a little while.
Yeah,
yeah. But he's made of. He's powered by chemicals and electricity, and he's a dead guy. Why would like things started? So we'll just like, never mind. I'm not going to talk about my potential comic book that I'm writing.
I read 2 introductions for the 1880 edition. First was in my audiobook, and then I read this one.
Sure.
And I want to just read this one little passage here. It's on like the basically the intro text, the XIII, so 13 in Roman numeral. And this is, who wrote this? Jeanette Winterson. Okay. And was written April 2025, so really
very recent.
Right? This is like the newest edition,
the freshest.
It's even got the Netflix movie that just came out. This novel has been called many things: a gothic novel, a sci-fi novel, an epistolary novel.
That means it's written in letter form.
Yes. It's an early novel by a woman. It's a novel about the importance of education. Above all, though, it is a novel about responsibility.
Yeah, it is.
Victor Frankenstein is a deadbeat dad.
Straight up.
So I really liked that one. That he, this one actually also has a really good introduction. Talking about things like artificial intelligence.
Oh,
because if you think about the era that we're in. Like, and you compare it to Mary Shelley's era, she is like living through the first major industrial revolution.
Yeah, kind of tail end, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And, so, and then also, like, I also thought it was really interesting because her mother argued with Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Oh my God.
Had the Leathers arguing with Rousseau about freedom and liberation. There's constant critiques on labor that Mary Shelley's exposed to, obviously by her father and things. And so there's a lot of this like class consciousness thing, and you do kind of see hints of some of that sprinkled throughout the book. But there's also this idea of like the technology that is going to replace us. Victor is terrified that Frankenstein is going to replace.
That's why he doesn't make the bride.
That's why he doesn't make the bride.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of thing going on, and you have the incidents with the Luddites is going on as she's as she's working on Frankenstein. This kind of stuff is happening. It's news all over the place. You're talking about these people smashing, and if you don't know the story of the Luddites, it's woefully misunderstood.
Absolutely, the Luddites were sick.
They are not irrational, not afraid of technology.
Lud was like a folk hero in the vein of Robin Hood.
Yeah. So this is a group of people who were just like normal weavers and normal, machinists or not machinists, but they did all like the sewing and stitching and they worked with the older like spindling machines and all this stuff, and they were craftsmen of a variety of different groups. And along comes these factories that immediately put them out of work and
Yeah.
leave them starving with no sort of compensation.
And making inferior products. And the factory owners would do sabotage too.
Yep.
And so the Luddites, led by, I want to say William Ludd? John Ludd? Somebody named Ludd. He also might be a fictional character. It's hard to know at this point. But led by a man named Ludd, just started protesting. They started out by protesting these practices.
Picket lines around factories.
Exactly.
Trying to shut it down, saying things like, we're gonna, don't use these factories. These are literally causing our children to starve. And of course, the capitalist class was saying things like, look at these people. They're afraid of technology.
They're being violent and they're like little terrorists and... but they eventually did start doing sabotage to the factories and the machines, and they were supported by everybody in the community.
Yeah.
Like, people, when like, I don't know, basically, essentially, stormtroopers started coming around looking for them, they would hide them, they would feed them.
All kinds of stuff.
They would say, like,
a local resistance.
It was towns all over that part of England. I want to say, like, around Manchester. And... just like
it was super effective until they made the destroying the property a death penalty.
Yeah, and private property. Once again, private property ruins everything.
Yep. Once again,
private property and personal property are not the same thing. By the way, private property is owned by like basically a capitalist.
Yeah,
and personal property is like your house.
Right. So. So, when you're thinking about Frankenstein, you're thinking about this Industrial Revolution, and then you're thinking about the moment that we're going through right now. We have a group of people who are, tech savvy, advanced technology, who are creating new systems without any regards to what they might do to society and culture.
Yeah, people act like being a disruptor is a good thing. But what disruption basically does is like privatize fundamentally public services. So if you think about Uber and Lyft, though that disrupted the taxi industry. The taxi industry was an industry that was centuries old, was very well understood by the public, by private institutions, and by regulators. It was a system that was regulated so that people who were taking taxis were safe. They didn't get gouged.
Yeah.
There was like a fare that you could see.
Dude, and speaking of safe, like Vox did this investigative piece it was a couple months ago on the sexual assault rates for Uber, and it is unbelievable.
Sure it's terrible. Yeah.
Like, look it up. Vox, they did a piece on Uber, and Uber is like hiding a lot of this stuff.
I believe that. I don't fuck with any of those things because it's too goddamn expensive. And so they always enter an industry by being cut rate. Cut rate means that you're basically taking the rate, you're cutting it in half to get customers to use your service, to make it seem like it's super affordable and super cool and innovative. But what you're doing is basically just cutting the feet out of the taxi industry or whatever industry you're disrupting. And then once you have crippled that industry, basically supplanted it, then you start charging more than was being charged by the taxi service in this case, because there's no regulation for you because you're technically not a taxi service, you're a ride share service. And that's somehow different, but usually only in bad ways.
And there's no accountability.
There's no accountability.
There's no way to organize any of that stuff.
Absolutely. And that's what Google has done with Yellow Pages.
Airbnb.
Airbnb has done to the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
Airbnb is one of the scourges of our time. Taken this industry that used to employ a lot of people, and not always in great ways. I'm not saying that hotels were always ideal employers, but when I worked at a hotel in college, I got a 401 fucking K, man. I got health insurance. I got guaranteed hours, because it was an industry that had once again existed for centuries, was really well understood by everybody in government and everybody who would use it. And Also, regulators would inspect them
and make
but
sure they're safe.
Try inspecting Airbnbs on a broad scale. I fucking dare you.
And not only that, it causes a huge increase in the housing market because these people they treat property as investment.
It's turning personal property into private property, which is fucking bad. Gutting every city that's worthwhile. Basically turning them into fucking ghost towns because they're like 50% the population they used to be. So like you walk around in any downtown at night right now, it's fucking scary. You feel like you're in 28 Days Later or some shit like that.
Yeah. So you got all these industries, and now, of course, I mean, like 3 of my books were stolen for AI training.
Of course.
That Meta was using.
Of course.
So, so it's like,
Meta.
And I've never, obviously I'll never see any compensation.
What are you gonna do about that?
They, several million books, and a lot of them from independent authors who don't make a lot of money off their books.
Yeah, visual artists
too, all that stuff, right? So we have this AI industry who's kind of taking advantage, essentially like blowing up our social system. You have like fucking Peter Thiel, who is like a total fucking nutcase. I mean, you see it. There's like it's from like I want to say it's like 2012 or 2013. He gets on it, and if you don't know who Peter Thiel is, he's like one of the co-founders of PayPal. And he is just like he's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
He gives this whole speech, and you can find it online about how we're just gonna make the tech industry undermine democracy because our ideas couldn't possibly be voted for. Like, my ideas are so bad that no one will vote for them.
He's on the record saying this.
He's on the record saying this. Yeah. So we're going to undermine everything. Yeah. Once again, it's like we have like an example, and like with Frankenstein, like this, Mary Shelley's writing about this, 200
plus years ago.
200 plus years ago now, right?
207.
About responsibility for technological development, for science, for all of that stuff.
Dangers of unthinking advancement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, what ends up happening is technology, when it advances at a rapid pace, ends up concentrating power in a few people. And then if you're lucky, you can have like a revolution to kind of rein it back in. But some things never get reined back in completely.
Oh, absolutely, man.
So that's, I mean, I was just, reading this and just becoming more furious thinking about the AI stuff. And look, I'm not inherently against AI. I think there are lots of applications it can be used for, like medical technology. Like, I sometimes use it at work in some cases, but it's like...
Well, it has very specific, discrete applications that it's actually quite good at.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law, will write copy for websites, and occasionally they'll be like, hey, can you use like an AI? Like, we don't want to pay the full rate, so it's okay if you use AI and then punch it up. And she's like, yeah, or like SEO optimization. Yeah. I guess SEO means optimization, search engine optimization. Yeah. Like, do this SEO like formula. And she's like, yeah, okay, and she'll use it for that. And she's like, it's great because, writing, like doing SEO is so fucking tedious. And that's like literally what a machine is good at. Is like figuring out an algorithm and then like plugging it in,
Yeah.
But it's got like 2 or 3 discrete uses that it's good at, but they're trying to sell it to us as a subscription service because that's all the tech industry knows how to do anymore. Is take something.
Yeah. And they're going to put ads on it. They're talking about that now.
Of course they are. Of course they are. Take something, anything that we like. Media. Okay, now we're going to turn all of the media into a streaming service, and you can subscribe to it. You don't own it anymore, and you never know what's going to be on there, but you might like something, and it's only $8 a month, until it's $12 a month or $15 a month, Paramount. Or music, same way. Like, you don't need to own physical music anymore, or books, Amazon with books. But it turns out you didn't actually buy that book. You just bought the right to access the book on Amazon's website while Amazon had the licensing rights to it. Sure, you paid the same amount that you would for a brand new fucking book, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's obviously,
she's very prescient.
She's very prescient about what's going on with technology. I'm sure, it would have been really interesting to hear like conversations with her father about the Industrial Revolution, just
I would
because
have loved that.
he was like an anarchist. He was the founder of what we think of. Anarchy gets kind of a bad rap. It's
well, it's because like skinheads kind of co-opt.
Yeah, I know. There's some problems, obviously,
but that's not his fault.
But it's not.
I was gonna say other themes. Like I feel like there are like some major themes in this book. I feel like we kind of covered ambition, but like and the quest for knowledge. But I think one of the main things that this book really like dials into is sympathy for the strange, and how like all the monster wanted or all the creature wanted was to be loved and like accepted despite the way he looked. But European society was just fundamentally unwilling to do that.
Yeah.
Granted, he was a hulking 8-foot man made of former humans, but but if you hear him talk, he's so eloquent.
Man, if he would have had a podcast, no one saw his face.
Well, and we live in the age of monster fuckers now anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's
furries
true.
be out there getting horny for like non-human shaped things all the time.
No, I know a woman who like monster porn is like her bread and butter.
That's what she
makes her living.
Yeah.
That's how she makes her living.
Oh, good for her.
She makes a lot of money off of monster porn.
All right.
Which, okay, whatever.
Yeah, not my bag, but good for her.
Yeah,
I'm glad there are people like that out there.
But it is always interesting too, and like her commentary on like the monstrosity of the appearance too. If you actually look, one of the big problems with a lot of horror in general is that people who look unusual or strange or they're disabled, there tends to be a lot of like analogs for that within monsters themselves in horror. That, or there's also like class stuff going on, like
Absolutely.
with it's always the poor white people who are eating people in the mountains and committing incest and all this other stuff, right? Like there's a whole white trash narrative there. So a lot of the problems with horror is that it often kind of, it's so interesting because to have like this novel as like one of the early foundations of what we consider modern horror, but it's like a lot of horror exploits people with disabilities of a variety of kinds.
Exploits them in turns them into monstrosities. Like, the way that someone looks, sure.
It's like back to like the Elephant Man and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right? Which is obviously, that film is a commentary on the what do you call it? The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and all this sort of stuff. And we do have stories like that throughout literary history as well. But like, you see a lot of horror just basically deformed humans are the monsters, right?
I think, yeah. I mean, well, I would say that that's probably a problem with like schlock. I think like horror as a genre in this case, like the monster is the wronged party.
Yeah.
Like the creature is aggrieved and justifiably, and he can eloquently express that to a point where, like, unless you're, I don't know, a boomer or something like that, you're gonna be like, yeah, this guy's right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there was that meme going around where someone was like, and I don't know if this was real because you never know anything now.
Sure.
But there was a meme going around where like some right-wing boomer was like, oh, the woke people want to say that Victor Frankenstein is the actual monster and not the monster. And it's like, that's like literally the point.
That's the book, bro. What? So we're taking the monster side now? Fucking kids.
Yeah.
No, like woke libs. But yeah, no, but in other, I agree with you. Like, you can definitely watch schlocky B movies, and they're definitely just taking someone with a deformity and turning them into the monster. I mean, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a great example of like social commentary through horror too, because the white trash people in that movie are literally turning other humans into sustenance because their industry is being co-opted. Like there was a yeah, absolutely. Because at the time there was like a gas shortage, and I think Teamsters were on strike. So like, you know, this industry that the people in Texas Chainsaw Massacre were like working within was just disappearing.
Yeah.
And so they had to turn hippies into food. But those hippies were also like rich Austin kids, you know? So it was like the poor, marginalized, you know, Texas hill folk turning the symbols of their oppression into sustenance, which is interesting to think about. And you could kind of see it as exploitative, but you could also see it as like maybe really astute commentary. I don't.
Well, you know, and I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, horror has so much interest. I think
It's
personally,
a
I think
vein.
the best horror is the one with really interesting social commentary.
Oh man, The Substance.
Yeah,
yeah. Substance.
No, I haven't seen The Substance.
That's good, man.
But you know, Midsummer is another great one.
Oh yeah,
lots of really good stuff. And not back to Frankenstein.
Oh yeah, but
another theme that we talked about this briefly was like loneliness and alienation.
Sure.
And you see this, and I think that's just in general the idea, this ambition. Ambition alienates you, it isolates you.
Yes.
And like, you know, the one person who actually cares about that is the creature. The creature wants, and the creature doesn't have, the only ambition the creature has is to be loved.
Right.
Whereas,
well, and then revenge.
And revenge, yes, revenge, but after he's been denied.
Yeah.
But Walton, the captain of the ship, and Victor, who are both like making choices that obviously destroy things.
Yeah.
You know, they're just very ambitious. They're also very lonely. And this kind of sense of isolation, like when you take, you know, and you got, I mean, look, people like Peter Thiel, people like Elon Musk, they are lonely fuckers. Oh, they are like some of those, you can tell by everything they do and say
especially on Twitter, man. Elon Musk, all he wants is for people to think he's funny, and he's a fundamentally unfunny person.
I mean, he paid someone to basically level up his video game, and he was so bad that it, like, when he actually played, that it exposed it because he wants people to like him.
Exactly.
And so a lot of these people who fall into these kinds of ambitions, they turn to things like fascism, or they turn into like authoritarianism, or they turn into like wild, crazy ideas or conspiracy theories because they're deeply, deeply lonely people isolated from human connection.
Absolutely. And they don't want to, I think there's a moment, there's like an inflection moment, and I think Victor really clearly illustrates that when his family's writing to him in his initial his like the building the creature phase, you know, where he's already achieved all of this success through his study, but he's still pushed farther and farther by his own fervor for knowledge and his ambition to like make scientific breakthroughs because he wants to be, you know, he wants accolades essentially.
Sure.
And he has this moment where he can choose to like write to his family, take a break, and he just doesn't. He pushes right through it.
Yeah.
He ignores their letters. He like there's I wrote this note where in Victor's college days, he could barely be bothered to write to his loved ones. And now that they're all dead, sans Ernst, his one brother who doesn't die, they are constantly in his thoughts, you know? He has this love for them, but he's able to put that aside because his ambition trumps it, you know? And it's very sad and very relatable. But I think all of those guys, all of those, you know, like top of their field, like billionaire types, made a choice at a certain point that they would rather be revered than loved. And they always regret it, but that regret drives them to do even more reprehensible things.
Yeah. Yeah, you know? Like Musk has got like a ketamine addiction.
Absolutely. You know? And you know, like fucking Amazon guy, Bezos, you know, he could be helping so many people with his money, but instead he's like shooting people into space and like renting out Venice for his wedding. Like just despicable behavior. And it's so fucking sad.
Not to mention the working conditions and
God, I mean, not to mention the like atrocities he's doing in his just general business practices.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Again, also like they can be more wealthy than the other ones. I guess I don't know. It's fucking sad.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see like some of these people who have like billions of dollars are like, why not a couple billion more? And
Absolutely.
You're like, at what point is enough? And that's like really in a lot of cases that's a theme here. At what point is enough? I mean,
Yeah.
Victor has like everything he could ever really
Dude,
want.
he's got an inheritance from his dad, who's like a very well respected man in the community, in like a beautiful. I mean, Geneva, fucking beautiful. Come on, get the fuck out of here. That's a great place to live, especially if you're well off. He's got a really cool friend who's like the nicest guy in the world in the 1818, and kind of a little bit more of a scumbag and colonialist in the 1831 version. But Henry, you know, is a cool guy who just likes to read and talk about the books he read. And then he's got a hot girl who's so in love with him that he can disappear for years at a time.
And she's still faithful and devoted.
Yeah.
And I think that's on, I think obviously Shelley is doing this on purpose to show that like he has everything he could want.
Yes.
He shuns it all.
Yes.
And then on top of that, when he does realize his ambition, he then shuns his own ambition.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah. We do have a comment.
Oh, great. Love to see that.
Oh. Thank you. It's one of my students who says, great costume. Thank you very much.
It is a good costume. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about is like the responsibility of the creator. I think we touched on that a little bit, but I think that this is the one thing that like really has such a hard analog with the tech stuff that we've been talking about so far. And I guess actually maybe we've already covered it because like all of these tech guys will create something just to create it. They do it and they say they just want to disrupt an industry to make it like more dynamic and interesting, but really they'll like create an app and then it'll run amok and then they'll just like leave it alone. But I think that
and not address the endless harms it caused.
Absolutely, but I think one of the really touching things that Shelley is drawing out in the relationship between Victor and the creature is that Victor and it comes it's so interesting because she apparently had a dream where and the dream was super vivid and it was like on a dark and stormy night like tonight where she in the dream there's a man who's like working furiously over a giant body on a table. And as soon as it moves, he's aghast, you know, and that's it. She wakes up and she's like, ugh. But that's the nascent idea behind Frankenstein. And I think making the creature so like emotionally like raw and so intelligent, so able to describe what it's feeling. She's doing this thing where she's really sharply drawing like the relationship between a parent and a child, but the child can speak with like the beautiful prose of Milton, you know, and describe what it's going through. And the monster at one point like relates to the archangel, the fallen angel, I should
Lucifer,
Lucifer, more strongly than any other person in the book.
Yeah, he's like, well, Lucifer is pretty cool.
Well, he's like, Lucifer is me, man. I feel like this is like, I see myself in him.
Yeah.
But
because he's been rejected.
Because he's been rejected by his creator. And the creator has all the power in that relationship to grant love and sympathy.
I've actually thought maybe we should read Paradise Lost at some point.
I'd be down.
Because, like, I mean, if you don't know the story, Satan or Lucifer is actually the hero.
He's the protagonist.
Because God is a dickhead.
Just like Victor.
Just like Victor. So there's obviously, she's very much drawing parallels from this, and then also, like she mentioned in the titles, or the modern Prometheus. So she's drawing on Greek mythology. She's definitely drawing on Milton, you know, in her kind of, some of her estimations. So.
Yeah, I don't think Victor's punished quite as brutally. Well, I don't know, maybe he is.
I mean, everyone he loves, that he's longed for, that he's abandoned, is killed.
Like Ernst.
And then he is like, and the creature's ultimate revenge is to get him to chase him around the world.
Yeah.
You know, endlessly without
suffer the way that he suffered.
Suffer the way that I suffer.
In nature, like making his way through like harsh like conditions. But I do think that the parallel of like a parent really like withholding love and affection or even understanding any sympathy at all shows up a lot in our modern context. And the main two things I was thinking about while I was reading this were like autistic people who are basically like there's a whole movement out there of parents who are rejecting their children because of the fact that they're autistic and blaming it on anything and everything they can find. But in doing that, negating the inherent humanity of their autistic children. Autism, people have been autistic for as long as we can tell. If you don't think that the character of Sherlock Holmes was clearly autistic, I don't know what the fuck you're thinking.
And as an autistic person, like we just want to be loved and accepted.
Absolutely. And then trans people. There were the other
trans people as well.
Thing I was thinking about is like these are just people who like maybe represent themselves in a different way that is like can be jarring to certain people. You know, maybe or like are kind of non-conforming in a visual sense and are being literally hounded right now by government.
Well, and it's also like they always pick groups that are in a small minority as much as they can. Because if you try to pick on like, because the reality is a lot of the poor, the majority of the poor people in this country, for example, are poor white, and it's just population dynamics. It's just there are more white people, so there are more poor white people, right? But if you started picking on the poor white people, they would rise up against you and overthrow your ass. What you do is you pick on a small minority or small group like trans people or autistic people or other groups that don't have a lot of power and don't have a lot of ability to fight
people who
back.
don't have like recourse to government services or something like that.
Right, or they don't have any social power to punish people, right? Which is a lot of which is a whole complicated conversation, and we probably shouldn't dive too deep into it, but it's like that's a lot of what was going on in the 2010s and the 20-teens is like
2010s or 2010s.
So it's 20 teens. It's just such a weird thing to say.
It's a hard decade to name.
It's a hard decade to name. But a lot of what's going on is as social media rises, minority groups suddenly have more social power to punish people for the wrongs that they've been experiencing for many generations.
Right.
And that is where the whole idea of wokeness comes from. It's a lot of people saying, look, for generations we have been punished, and now we have the ability to speak out and show you literally that this thing is going on a daily basis.
We can take videos of it and post it. And
that is like that's part of what I mean. Again, that's a whole complicated thing that we could talk about, but it's but like there's a lot of that stuff going on, is that you pick on the people who have less power to fight back.
Absolutely.
Which is why trans people is like the #1 demonized group at the moment. Because they're such a small minority and they have very little way to organize and fight back in a meaningful way.
And their ability to like realize their inner reality, to like make it very apparent to everyone else, is like through medical interventions. And those are so expensive. Like I can't think of another group that their identity is wrapped up in like
something that's really difficult to access.
Absolutely. That difficult to access, especially in the United States, man. It's fucking sad.
I know. Ironically, one of the #1 places in the world to have transition is Iran.
Really?
It's Iran.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Why?
I forget the reason, but I was reading a thing about this, and it was really fascinating that Iran does some of the highest number of transition surgeries.
Amongst its own population or others?
No.
Whoa.
For medical tourism.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. So. Damn. That's rad.
Yeah.
So that was... Oh, and then I also wanted to talk about adaptations of this book. It's one of the most adapted text there. Kind of...
Is it
on par... I was going to say on par with Dracula.
Okay. Dracula's pretty well adapted.
Yeah. And... Oh, man. Just a little side note. I saw the Dracula ballet a couple weekends ago. That shit, I was not a fan about. Like my wife and I just love Dracula, so we were. This is the version that we're seeing this holiday season. That shit ruled, man.
Yeah.
The
Dracula's a great novel too.
Well, Dracula's an amazing novel. Love that shit. That's another great epistolary novel, and but the Dracula ballet was so cool because they basically took like 5 or 6 scenes and really drew them out. Like that 5 or 6 scenes that are really iconic or evocative of the story itself, and then drew them out, you know, and like really kind of explored them through movement and music. And that was a fascinating way to tell that story, but it was also fucking sexy. Like the bit where Jonathan Harker is like trapped in the castle with Dracula was sexy as shit and also menacing as hell, man. It was like, and that Jonathan Harker, oh, he was cut, but I mean, he's a ballerina, you know? Or ballet dancer, I guess. Anyway, that's a whole side note, but there's been so many adaptations of the Frankenstein story, but I feel like almost none of them, except maybe this Guillermo del Toro one, seems like it might be like an accurate to the novel version of it. They almost always make the creature nonverbal and make Frankenstein like either a very crazy scientist from the beginning, not a man who's being led by his ambition, or a sympathetic character.
There was a 90s one, and it was called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and it was like a made-for-TV one.
Okay.
And I can't remember what channel had it, but I know because we watched it in science fiction fantasy class as we read Frankenstein.
Oh, well, you read Frankenstein in school.
And discussed it, yeah. So, so I think that one was trying to be true. And my teacher was like, "This is the truest adaptation."
Oh,
and
teachers always love to say shit like that.
Yeah, of course. As a teacher, yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to see the new one actually because and Del Toro is a phenomenal filmmaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has done some incredible, creative, interesting work. So it'll be really interesting to see how he approaches the material.
Absolutely.
And because he has, like an interview said, he's trying to be as authentic to the original as possible.
I was reading a little bit of the plot synopsis, and it starts with Walton's crew in the Arctic, but they're attacked by the creature, and he apparently has a healing factor. So already deviating a little bit from that. I know, right? Like, we need another Wolverine movie. Okay.
Yeah.
But I do love that they're starting with the framing story. That's pretty cool. And that was as far as I read. Once I was like, healing factor, I was like, well, one, they stole my idea. And two,
publish or perish, man.
That's what happens.
Publish or perish.
That's what happens. I'm that other guy, not Darwin.
Yeah.
Wallace?
Wallace,
yeah. And yeah, I wanted to say also that I think my favorite adaptation is Mel Brooks's because it does the one thing that no other version of the story does, which has Frederick Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein's grandson, take responsibility. He takes responsibility for his creation. He creates, his assembled man, and it goes on a rampage, and he lures it back to the castle through music because, as we all know, music tames the savage breast.
Yes. Breast,
not beast.
Not beast. That's right. It is breast.
That's breast. Yeah. And so he lures him back with a really beautiful and haunting tune, and then he teaches him. He tells him he's good.
Then he makes him his lady.
And then he makes him a lady.
No,
he doesn't.
He does. He falls in love.
His girlfriend at the time, his Elizabeth, falls in love with the creature because he's got an enormous snot stuffer. Yeah. And then and Frederick falls in love with his assistant, played by Terry Garr.
That's right. That's
amazing.
Right. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Putting on the wrist. If you have not seen Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein with Gene Wilder, it's got to be Gene Wilder's best performance.
I mean, he's pretty good as the gunslinger in Blazing Saddles.
He's pretty good too. Blazing Saddles got all kinds of really interesting social commentary.
The producers also.
Yeah.
He's actually in several very good Mel Brooks movies.
And also, he's just really good as, Willy
Wonka.
Wonka.
Yeah. Oh, Willy Wonka!
Psychotic Willy Wonka, yeah.
Best Willy Wonka, obviously. Yeah. Wow, yes.
Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. It's such a good book.
It is.
I was really happy to read a slightly different version of it.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think...
we need to talk about real quick here, the difference. The key difference.
Yes.
So, in the 1818 edition, everything is about, agency and free will and like Victor Frankenstein is like pursuing this thing.
Personal choice.
Personal choice. In the 1831, the core revision, there are a number of small revisions, such as like who Elizabeth is, who Henry is. Mm-hmm. Henry's like basically a colonialist. Elizabeth is an adopted woman, not a direct blood cousin.
Right. They still say cousin a lot, but that's kind of a time period thing.
Yeah.
Lots of like distant relations would be referred to as cousins or aunts, depending on the age.
But like after Mary Shelley goes through all the shit she went through, her life is destroyed. She literally, one researcher I was like listening to talks about how she outlived all the other romantics. So there's no romantics left.
Oh,
so she's the last of her kind of like this age of literacy and of literary genius, and so she's the last one left. And
so she writes The Last Man.
That's why she writes The Last Man.
Yeah.
Her children are dead. Her husband is dead. Everything's gone. And so the 1831 edition is much more about fate and destiny and how Victor cannot escape the trap of his torture.
Interesting.
And so it's a very different kind of feel and can be in different interpretation and meaning. And there's a lot of people who are like, well, which book is the real Frankenstein?
I mean, I think they're kind of two different books in like subtle but important ways.
Yeah.
I definitely. So I've read the 1831 version twice, and I've read this one once.
Same thing.
And I like them both a lot. I like the fact that 1818 book feels more like a comment on society. It feels more like a comment on her parents' politics and things that were happening at the time. Obviously, there's actually some more commentary in the 1831 book about like the state of the world and colonialism, as pointed out. Yeah. Henry Clerval he's studying like languages so he can do better colonialism.
Yeah. Be a better international
businessman. Yeah. So instead of being a man of letters, he's a man of business, which is just an interesting thing to think about. How it's almost like they're two books from like two similar but slightly different worlds.
Yeah, and I also think that the 1831 is definitely more pessimistic.
It's cynical.
More cynical. Yeah. Cynical is a better word for it.
Which I think is understandable. I'm more cynical now than I was when I was 25. Like when I was 25, I was in school to like get a degree and like politics and like work at a nonprofit so
change the world.
Make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Exactly. I thought The West Wing was good and smart.
Yeah.
I still think The West Wing is a fun show to watch, but I don't think its politics are good at all. But I did back then. I thought we could use
classic centrist.
I'm such a centrist. Yeah, no. But I was more of one back then, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I thought compromise was possible in politics. And I don't really think that that's the case, at least in our system anymore.
Yeah,
I think that
compromises.
If one side is not willing to compromise, if the conservative side just uses politics to obstruct what compromise can be had. Mm-hmm. You just have to win and implement your policies. That's what you have to do. You can't pretend that you want the same things as people who want a fundamentally different thing from you.
Well,
and if one side is not willing to come to the table, then you trying to compromise is just you guaranteeing you're going to lose. Maybe not an election, but you're going to lose the fight.
Yeah, lose the war.
You're going to lose that fucking war.
Even if you win the battle.
Yeah.
But so like, and it's also important to remember that like...
She was 18.
She was 18.
When she wrote this genius work of fiction.
And then...
Unparalleled.
How old she would be in 31?
Be like...
18, 16. 16 plus 30. She's, especially for that era, middle-aged at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because and literally she was in her middle age. She died in her early 50s.
Yeah. So she, So, I mean, you have a lot of different perspectives between, the person I was at 18 is totally different. I've got a good friend. We've been friends since high school. She's the only friend I really have that really has, like, continued constant communication with me, and she's like, yeah, you're not even the same person.
Of course you're not, dude. Yeah, you've had a lifetime's worth of experiences since that point.
Yeah,
you know?
and I've got a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
So you hear that, Francis? You got to be like Mary Shelley. You gotta.
No. No, don't marry a poet.
No, don't marry a poet. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, there's some fundamental differences. I think they're worth both reading, honestly. And I think if you read either one, you're still getting a lot of the core message and core ideas.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few thematic differences, but for the most part, you're getting the core of what she's trying to tell.
Yeah.
And she says that in her introduction to the 1831 edition. She kind of says, well, nothing's really changed. She definitely made some changes, but like the core of the story is still there.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
how it's framed, the kind of Matryoshka doll approach, and then like how it ends is all.
I think responsibility is still a main theme.
It is,
and I think that the thing she's warning about, the thoughtless pursuit of scientific advancement, is still really present in both versions and very meaningful. I don't.
Yeah, and the thoughtless pursuit of anything, any kind of power, because
she's just telling you to think about what you want, to think about the things you're pursuing in a meaningful way, because you might just be like trying to go to the Arctic for no goddamn reason.
Well, and look, the thoughtless pursuit
mm-hmm.
of science is like no different than the thoughtless pursuit of any other kind of power.
Absolutely,
it's just the thoughtless pursuit. Damn everybody else. Brush them aside.
Yeah.
I don't care. Love anybody. Forget everybody else.
Move fast and break things is bad. And that's what she's saying.
Yep. That's exactly what she's saying. And she's like literally living through one of the most fundamentally rapid changing technological moments in the history of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so she's living through it. And then in the 31 edition, she's really seeing the aftermath of this.
Yeah.
So, she can add additional commentary, and she does in some ways.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately the mindlessness, the hyper individualism that comes with that, the forgetting of family and community, and
mm-hmm.
the beauty of nature. Like, and there's the theme of
haunted by it throughout.
Yeah, and like the only time people are ever really happy is when they're in nature in this book,
mm-hmm.
including the creature. Creature is happiness when he's like in harmony, and there's Ish.
No, actually, I would say that the creature's happiest when he feels like he's close to or in community.
That's true. That's true.
And that's the other thing that she's talking about, is like nature and community is what's worthwhile.
Right.
And when you toss those aside, you're going to be sad.
Yeah. And you need both. Mm-hmm. And she is. I was reading something from one scholar about how she's like really into this dark green religion, which is like this kind of like eco.
Yeah, it was one of those romantic era. Yeah.
Which it's a whole other topic, and but certainly something other viewers can look up if they want to engage with it. But yeah, it's a word. I think both versions are well worth reading. I don't really think, like, if you are not a avid reader, like, you don't have to read both. You can kind of think, do I want to read like a much more raw account, which is the 1818 version, or you want to read like a much more
more polished version,
which is the 1831. So it's really up to you.
I'm one of those people who prefers like early Beatles or early Clash, because you can kind of hear them like figuring it out, and the 1818 edition of this feels a little bit like that, like the Clash's first album. It's nascent genius. And then she's got other great books, and these have only been really like reevaluated in the last like 20 years. Mm-hmm. But Lador, so good. Not Spooky. The Last Man. Also, like, the fact that she was a pioneering genius in like two of our main things that we love these days, like science fiction, horror, and dystopian, like future dystopian novels. Last Man is literally about a 21st century plague that wipes out society.
Oh boy.
I know.
I didn't know about that one.
So, dope.
Yep, check her out. So our next episode is going to be Babel. We talked about that one, which is a kind of a critique on academia in the British Empire. And we decided that we are, in fact, going to read the sequel to Iron Widow, Heavenly Tyrant.
We both have already started reading it, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, it is such great commentary on A, what do you do with oligarchy? How do you deal with them? And B, what happens after the revolution?
Yeah, is revolution a good idea to like craft a government around? Maybe, or maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe not actually.
Right. So a lot of really great themes. I really loved Iron Widow, but I'm enjoying Heavenly Tyrant even more. So we'll be doing that one. Yeah. That one will be sometime in December. Until then,
yes, have a spooky Halloween.
Have a spooky Halloween, and thanks for joining us on our 10th episode.
Ooh, big number 10. All right. We went a little bit longer on that one, but I feel like it was totally worth it.
That's our longest one officially, but